seconds to go. We need a Minneapolis miracle. Case on a deep drop, steps up in the pocket. He'll fire to the right side. Off by Diggs. Stay up. Oh my God! 30, 10, touchdown! Are you kidding me? Miracle finish! It's a Minneapolis miracle! Oh my God! No way! Ah! What a miracle finish!
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the State of Purple podcast. It feels like football season. We're kind of getting back into the swing of things. Some big news for your Minnesota Vikings. And minicamp is underway at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Facility Center, whatever it is. I'm AJ Mansour. He is Jack Day. You might have heard of him. He's kind of blown up in the news the last couple of days. You know, Ian Rappaport fame, Pro Football Talk fame. It's been a big week for our guy Jack, breaking some news. We'll get to that in a little bit. But before we do, Jack, this is starting to feel fun again, right? I mean, the vibe has completely changed this last week as we get some news. It's good news, and people are excited as the Vikings report to minicamp, which we were all worried about.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing heading into minicamp, the biggest storyline was whether or not Danielle Hunter is going to be in attendance, and got the news yesterday that it was reported yesterday that he was expected to show up. He did show up. Sounds like all the medicals checked out, which is another thing that a lot of people are worried about, that lingering neck injury. We saw the Vikings trade away Mike Hughes because of a similar lingering neck injury. So that's good news on the medical side. And it sounds like both sides are happy because they ended up reworking Danielle Hunter's deal. I think what they did, they gave him, like, I have the details here. I think it was like 5.6 million of this year's money. He's going to get with a signing bonus. And then Ian Rappaport tweeted this out yesterday. More importantly, there's now an $18 million roster bonus on the 5th day of the league year in 2022, creating a decision for Minnesota. He'll either make $20 million or so next year, be released, or they will have to rework his deal again.
Right. So you have a win-win situation for now, right? You have the Minnesota Vikings get a little security as far as the longevity of this contract, because we don't know what this injury is really going to look like when he gets back on the field. So they get a little reworked money this year. Danielle gets a little more guaranteed for the future, rework that into a bonus structure like you mentioned, and has an opportunity to really get a big payday when that new TV deal comes, when the new salary cap comes in, and things kind of get back to normal in the NFL. So for now, this is a win-win for the Minnesota Vikings. Not only do you get the biggest distraction for your team out of the way, you get your number one defender. I think it's safe to call him the number one defender on this team, right? Assuming he's healthy.
Yes, I think maybe not necessarily the biggest difference maker on the
impact
defense
player.
Yes, I think that's the most fair way to explain him.
We'll go with that. You get him back there. You get him, and it really does change how we look at this defense totally. Last week, Jack, we talked about here. I'm going to switch the graphics here. For those of you who are listening to this podcast, you can stream this podcast because we live stream it on social media each week. People are watching on the KFAN social media channels and our social media channels as well. And you can be part of the show. You can kind of chime in and really talk about what we're doing, throw some comments out there. You can see Jack's face. Jack Day is a real person. You can see him right now as he, the power trip had a little fun with that this morning. We'll get to that later as well. But yes, Danielle Hunter is maybe the most impactful player on this defense because we talked about last week, Jack, the doom and gloom. One of our worries for this team is if Danielle didn't show up, there's a trickle-down effect. Okay, that defensive line then is not terrible, but it's kind of shot, right? You have questions on the other side. We're not sure what the middle looks like. That looks different now than it did last week. We'll get to that next. But then it trickles back to every level of the defense. If you don't start up front and get a stalwart defensive line, you're going to have some issues. If you don't put pressure on the quarterback, you're going to have some issues in the secondary because they can't just cover everybody on their own. You need to get pressure up front as well. So having Danielle opens that up. It's a level playing field with, I think, an advantage for the Minnesota Vikings, and good to see him out there in minicamp. Minicamp is minicamp, but again, as teams around the league are worried about players that are not showing up, Xavier Howard in Miami, Aaron Rodgers across the border here, we don't have that worry anymore, Jack, and it feels pretty good.
Yeah, it feels fantastic. And I feel like I've almost been like a broken record repeatedly saying in article after article, like that 2020 defense, I think Mike Zimmer took that personally. It was a 29th ranked scoring defense, the worst in the Mike Zimmer era. And I think that exactly what you just said, it all started up front. We saw a defense that was led by, at the end of the 2020 season, it was still led by Yannick Ngakoue, who only played in 6 games, I think it was, for the Vikings. So that was not good. There was a game where I think he had 6 touchdowns on Christmas. He just ran right down the throat of the Vikings. That's not what Mike Zimmer football is about. He's always been about, it's a run-first offense. I know that can kind of frustrate some people with how successful Kirk Cousins has been and the weapons they have, but it's always been run the ball, be able to establish that, and play solid defense. And I think with Danielle Hunter returning, I think it's finally safe to say that this 2021 Minnesota Vikings defense, it could be special.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And again, at least the distraction is off the field. I love the comments that are coming in right now. Jack, he looks like a real person. I think that Jack Day is real. Who the hell is Jack Day? That was the onus this morning. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Jack, next I want to shift over to another. Well, I guess this is the reason we're talking about that. Is you broke some news earlier this week with a familiar face back in Minnesota. Everybody knows who it is, but tell us who it is, and congratulations on getting your name on Pro Football Talk. Ian Rappaport, all the national reporters were referencing KFAN's Jack Day, the fake real person that nobody really knew who you were until now. You've arrived. Tell us about this new free agent signing that came in officially this morning.
Yeah, Sheldon Richardson, obviously he played at the Vikings. I think the last year he played in Minnesota was in 2018. Went to
2 years with the Browns.
Two years with the Browns. I think it was a 3-year deal, and they ended up releasing him. And it does sound like the contract is official and it's out there. It sounds like it's a 1-year, $3.6 million deal. And I wanted to say that the contract was somewhere along the lines, his Browns contract was like a 3-year, like $36 million deal. So this is an absolute bargain of a deal. I think he addressed the media just a couple hours ago, not even a couple hours ago, and he was talking about he's going to fit in wherever this team needs him to fit in. It sounds like he might understand that this is the interior of the defensive line is Michael Pierce and Delvin Tomlinson. I think especially in early downs where it's a run first down, I think that's safe to say that those two are going to be the starters. But what you have in Sheldon Richardson is this guy played, someone tweeted this out yesterday, and his name's escaping me. He played over 200 snaps on the outside for the Cleveland Browns in 2020. He finished with 4.5 sacks, which as a 3-technique defensive tackle, yes, I just said he did play some outside, which I think could be exciting for Vikings fans because I think on run downs, there's a lot of people that wanted that other edge spot addressed. There's a possibility that Sheldon Richardson on early downs could bump out to that spot as well and play in that role. But 4.5 sacks for the Cleveland Browns last year, that is a half a sack under what Yannick Ngakoue led the Minnesota Vikings with a year ago. So just getting this much depth, you have Danielle Hunter now back, you add Sheldon Richardson, they go out and get Delvin Tomlinson in free agency. Michael Pierce comes back, last year's kind of prize free agent who opted out due to COVID stuff. But yeah, I think this defensive line, the depth is now something to be excited for. And that's without even getting into the Stephen Weatherly signing that happened. I think that could be an under-the-radar signing where he's another key depth piece. And then they go out and they get a 3rd round and a 4th round pick defensive end with a lot of raw upside in both Patrick Jones and Janarius Robinson. So I think there is just the excitement levels, if you're a Vikings fan, for not only this defensive line, but the defense as a whole should be off the charts because like you just said, everything will start up front. We saw the young secondary, which isn't so young anymore with guys like Patrick Peterson, right, Mackenzie Alexander, and Bashad Breeland. It's like they're just finding guys on all 3 phases of this defense that have some veteran leadership left in them. I think this defense is, like I said, I'm repeating myself, and you can probably tell that I'm pretty jacked up because I think this is going to be a very entertaining defense to watch, and it's going to feel like Mike Zimmer football again in 2021.
Well, in some of the Mike Zimmer characteristics of those defenses that you're referencing are the rotational players on that defensive line specifically, right? It was what he carried from the Cincinnati Bengals and brought here to Minnesota, but at the same time, he likes to almost treat it like a hockey roster where you're shifting lots of players in and out. with fresh bodies, so that you're not, not even obviously with a guy like Danielle, he's going to be out there every single play. But if somebody on the inside needs a rest, now you have Sheldon Richard to come in. If you need to get creative like they did against the New Orleans Saints a couple years ago in that playoff game, you can shift Sheldon to the outside, maybe Danielle to the inside, Stephen Weatherly to the inside, whatever that is. You have that opportunity now with the depth that you're creating on defense. There's still the question marks of those cornerbacks and the defensive backs. The depth that they have, they've signed a bunch of people. It was weird the way that they did it. Post-draft, post-free agency, first wave, free agent signings that come in. But when you see the names that you bring in with Brashad Breeland and Patrick Peterson early on in the free agency process, you have some opportunities with some guys there. Mackenzie Alexander, familiar with the system, chose to come back because it was a good fit for him. They also brought him back. Remind ourselves often that these guys, Mike Zimmer, George Edwards, the defensive coordinators, the co-defensive coordinators, Adam Zimmer, they know more about these players than we do. So when we look at this situation and we say we don't have a defensive end opposite of Danielle Hunter, maybe they think they do. Maybe they think that they have somebody that could fill into that spot, or maybe it's two people that can fill into that spot and cause enough havoc with single coverage. Danielle's going to get the double. You're going to get the pressure up the middle. So you have single coverage on that outside. Maybe they think they have something there. And again, they know much more than we do about this team. So we can sit here, play armchair quarterback, armchair defensive coordinator, whatever you want, all day long. At the end of the day, they're going to know more about it. Trust the process. I know that's weird for me to say as we sit here. Last week, we dissected and critiqued this defense and this team and the moves that they made. But, Jack, it really is a weird difference 1 week from last week, and it just feels different. And that brings us to our next point here. I'm going to pull up the screen. It feels like there is blood in the water in the NFC North. It feels like that blood smells a little bit like cheese right now. And with the narrative surrounding Aaron Rodgers has only continued to get worse as he doesn't show up, and the divide between him and the front office remains. It feels like when we first heard this on draft day, it was kind of like, okay, this is weird, but it'll probably blow away. A month and a half later, it hasn't blown away. Mini camps are here. He's not reporting. The Minnesota Vikings are continuing to make moves, and all of a sudden, in a 48-hour period, Vikings fans have shifted from the fatalistic, pessimistic Minnesota sports fan that just thinks that we didn't do good enough in the draft. We never make splashes at the beginning of free agency. The division is still going to be owned by Green Bay. Well, now that shifted. The feeling that I have gotten from social media, Jack, and tell me if you feel it any differently, is that the Vikings fans think that this division is ours, is theirs, the Vikings. It's for the Minnesota Vikings to take now, which means a playoff run, which means maybe home field in the first round, and an opportunity to go deep, hopefully, with a team that is proving to be deeper and more dangerous on both sides of the football than we thought about a month ago. Is that a fair assessment of the vibe right now in Purple Nation, whatever you want to call it?
I do think it's fair. I think there's
time out. I'm going to call it the State of Purple, right? This is a stupid name of the podcast, AJ. In the State of Purple, it feels different today, right, Jack?
Yeah, I think that is 100% fair. And I still think there is one piece of the puzzle that's missing, and that is still circulating around Aaron Rodgers. We've seen the videos circulating of Jordan Love that were in the early phases of practice last year where he couldn't make a throw and hit a net from like a 10-yard, I think it was like a 10, 15-yard throw. But the Aaron Rodgers news is extremely interesting. That is not going away. I think it was some sort of preparation interview that they did with the match where they have Bryson DeChambeau, Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers. And I tweeted it out because they were interviewing him, and they asked Rodgers, and he said, the guy interviewing him essentially said, yeah, Rodgers, what has it been like just having a chill off season where you're not really creating any storylines, and trying to watch Tom Brady trying not to laugh was pretty hysterical. But Rodgers was wearing a shirt that said, I'm offended. And I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is just the most petty quarterback in the entire NFL, or if he's just trying I think he's trying to toy with Green Bay a little bit. And
Frank, remember the purple Gatorade, that like all these things that he's very petty. If I were reading between the lines, I do think he's very petty. Yeah.
And I think it just, all signals are pointing right now that Aaron Rodgers isn't going to show up. They came out, I think GM said something along the lines of Aaron Rodgers being an interesting character, an interesting personality. And I don't know if the shirt saying I'm offended is stemming from that or what, but I it's really interesting. And right now, I mean, I don't think Vikings fans have teams to fear. I tweeted the Sheldon Richardson news, and I had to essentially mute some people because there was Bears fans and Vikings fans that were going at each other about the next decade of football. And I was very high on Justin Fields coming out of the draft. But right now, Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears don't scare me. He's a rookie quarterback. Mike Zimmer usually tends to have his way with rookie quarterbacks. And then you have Jared Goff, a new quarterback, going along with the Detroit Lions, who Sean McVay didn't think was capable enough of running that offense out in LA. And if Jordan Love is the starting quarterback for Green Bay, there's really no debate, in my opinion, that Kirk Cousins will be the best quarterback in the NFC North if Aaron Rodgers does get traded, or if that does not get resolved over in Green Bay. So I think it's certainly fair to say that Vikings fans on Twitter are extremely optimistic about this season, and all of these signings kind of giving Mike Zimmer all of the tools that he didn't have in that 2020 season, all of the depth on that defense. I think that's a huge reason as to why they're so excited.
And I can't remember if this was out last week before we chatted. So if we've covered this last week or not, but the one of the more recent pieces of this story with Aaron Rodgers, it might have been a Florio bit, Pro Football Talk, that he put out, where it might be a better situation for Rodgers to retire, kind of pull a Favre and force your hand that way. So rather, if he's not going to be able to force a trade, but he's still upset with this situation, a better situation for him, a better position for him to retire, because if you retire, you don't get the fines from minicamp. You don't get the fines from training camp. You can go longer into the season. It's something like you can go to week 13 where you can only go to week 11 if you're holding out, or whatever that is. It's a longer baseline that you can, quote unquote, retire than you can hold out before it becomes a final finality. So that may be a play. If he can't force his way out of Green Bay, but he doesn't want to do that, maybe he, quote unquote, retires with the fully intending to come back at some point in time. He could just retire. Whatever it is, anytime Aaron Rodgers is not on the football field, it's advantage whoever the Packers' opponent is, because he can pick apart anybody, and he has the ball in his hands. He's not only putting points on the board, but he's keeping the ball away from the other team. It's a duality of what he does and brings to the football field. So that situation is interesting. But again, the moral of this part of the story is that from day to day, from for sure week to week, the narrative, the feeling in this division has completely changed, and it's changed in favor of the Minnesota Vikings. This is the image. I know you saw, Jack. I made this image today for an article I put up. Look at I love the center image right here. My buddy designed this. It's a King of the North kind of image here. You got the Viking sitting on the chair with the sword through the cheese. You got the lion tamed right next to it. I'm going to pull this banner down real quick so you can see the bearskin rug on the bottom there, and it says skull on the top. This is the image on the blog that I put up for KFAN.com, questioning whether or not the Vikings are going to be really good this year, because that's what we're feeling one day in. But this situation has it's changed, and it has a lot of Vikings fans on social media excited. It has KFAN's famous Jack Day excited. It has the Power Trip excited. It has the entire station excited as well. One other thing that I'm working on right now, Jack, another article I'll get up this week, that I want to discuss with you is the every other nature of Mike Zimmer. Are you familiar with what I'm referencing here?
I'm assuming it's the make the playoffs in odd years and miss the playoffs in even years.
Right. Yeah. So I'm looking back. I'm popping over to a different window here, Pro Football Reference. I'm going to look at the records for the Minnesota Vikings ever since Mike Zimmer took over in 2014. The even years, okay? Those are the years that they missed the playoffs. The odd years, they have a good year and they make the playoffs. 2014, they go 7-9. They miss the playoffs. 2015, 11-5. They lose in the wild card. 2016, 8-8, missed the playoffs. 2017, they go 13-3. They lose in the conference finals or the conference championship, whatever you want to call it. The next year, 2018, 8-7. The next year, 10-6. They lose in the divisional round. And then last year, 7-9. They missed the playoffs. Jack, this is an odd year. This is the other year where if you're buying into this theory, this idea that Mike Zimmer struggles every other year, they miss the playoffs every other year for whatever reason, this is the other, and it's shaping up to maybe make the playoffs and have a good year.
Yeah, and I don't look too much into the odds and even years and stuff along those lines. I'm not huge into that, but what I do like to look into is look at the depth chart in 2020 and look at the depth chart right now in 2021. starting wise on paper, this team is so much better, specifically defensively. And we're a couple offensive linemen away or panning out away from that offense, going from I think it was the 4th ranked yardage offense last year. Could they become an even better offense with Kirk Cousins and Delvin Cook and Justin Jefferson? All of those playmakers, they're absolute superstars on that offense. If you get an offensive line in front of them that is even mediocre at best, if Wyatt Davis and Christian Davis all come in and they're both at least average, and then, like I said, you look at the roster on the defensive side of the ball, not only are the starters better on paper, but last year you saw guys go down and get hurt. There was limited to no depth, especially in that secondary and the defensive line. I think, like I said at the beginning of the show, Mike Zimmer took that personally, and I don't think they're going to have a situation where, say, a guy like Delvin Tomlinson, he does get hurt. The next guy up is Sheldon Richardson. It's not a rookie. Right. It's not going to be Jalen Twyman being forced into a role where guys like Cameron Dantzler or Jeff Gladney, they were forced into this defense last year and kind of thrown into the fire. I don't think that's going to be the case in 2021, and I think that's why it's safe to say that, yes, it is an odd season, and maybe the Vikings have a better chance at making the playoffs.
So this is going to be a reference for the people watching the video stream. Is this your dad ragging on you?
It is.
Jack's dad getting into the chat and saying AJ and whoever the other guy is. Again, we're going to end the show with that, Jack. You don't know this, but we're going to end the show with that bit. Real quick, as we do have this live interactive chat going, I'm very interested to see what people think. We're talking about double-digit wins here. We're talking about a playoff berth. Comment in that chat right now and tell me whether you think this team is a double-digit wins. Where do you think they're going to end? Remember, 17-game season. We have one so far. Jamie Simon chimed in and said that they're going to go 10-7 this season. I want to know what you guys think. I want to know what the vibe is from the people who are in on this stream right now. There's a bunch of people here because Jack blew up and Jack is now a celebrity. Now he's in here. Travis says 12 wins. That would be a feat, but again, 17 games, so it's like 11 wins in the normal season. Joker Nation says 12 wins as well. There are still some concerns that people are also chiming in with Jack. There's a kicker situation that nobody's talking about right now. What that could be a concern there. Let's see here real quick. Steve says 11-6. Tyler says 11-6 as well. There's also the question you mentioned of the offensive line. You talked about the young guys up at the offensive line. If they can hold their oats and really do anything up there, it's going to be an improvement from last year, right? I mean, it can't be as bad as it was last year.
Yeah, I think it's a struggle because Vikings fans, I think it's been a revolving door on the offensive line. I think a couple of years ago it was Drew Samia. You're hearing good things about Drew Samia heading in camp. He didn't really play much rookie year, and he kind of got to learn the offense, learn the system, and then he got his chance to start the following year, and it wasn't pretty. Guys like Dakota Dozier, it wasn't pretty watching him get turned around looking at his quarterback. It was an ugly offensive line, especially on that interior. I think it's a little early. A lot of people are still questioning whether or not Garrett Bradbury is the answer at center, and I think the questions are fair. But let's see what Garrett Bradbury looks like if he has two competent guards on each side of him. I think that's going to make a huge difference. And I'm starting to sound extremely optimistic, which is worrisome coming from a Minnesota sports fan that just watched the Wild lose in the playoffs and the Twins season starting to spiral out of control.
Jack, I know you're younger than me, but this is what we do. We get excited and just to have our hearts crushed. But tell me about it.
That's true. And I think, like I said, the Vikings, they have all the pieces in place on the offensive side of the ball. If that offensive line can be a top 16, top 15 unit, I'm fully confident. I will go on record and say this right now. I'm confident that Mike Zimmer has the pieces in place to have at least a top 10 defense again in 2021. Obviously, that's a huge jump from being the 29th ranked scoring defense just a season ago. But like I said, the pieces are there. Mike Zimmer is an elite defensive mind. And one thing, I think Andrew Kramer, Star Tribune, reported this yesterday or tweeted out something along these lines. And I have gotten confirmation that there has been a couple looks of a 3-4 style. That's probably not going to be like a permanent thing because I don't think Mike Zimmer is going to completely change his schematics. Mm-hmm. But how about a 3-4 defense with Michael Pierce at the nose tackle position? The two defensive ends will be Delvin Tomlinson and Sheldon Richardson, and the outside linebackers are Danielle Hunter and Anthony Barr. That would be a scary front five, if you will. You can either have Barr rushing from one side or Danielle Hunter rushing from one side. I don't think Zimmer would want Hunter dropping back into coverage, Joe, so there's definitely that worry there.
We've seen that, and he's done
He's done some crazy things. Mike Zimmer has kind of he's a wizard of a defensive coach. I have all the respect in the world for his philosophy on the defensive side of the ball. And I think this could finally be the year where after that 2017 season, everyone expected, hey, they got Kirk Cousins. He was the only missing piece. And then the Vikings kind of fell flat on their face that year. This could be the year with the best overall roster that Kirk Cousins has seen in his entire NFL career.
Right. People still questioning, though, pull it up on the screen right here, wide receiver number 3. I kind of joked yesterday in an article I put out that Larry Fitzgerald was in town. He's in Minnesota. He was here for a golf tournament. It was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing. I'd be open to Larry Fitzgerald being that wide receiver number 3. But today, after with media availability, Adam Thielen did meet the press and say that he feels comfortable with the players that are on a roster as being options for that wide receiver number 3. It doesn't sound like there's going to be one person who is going to stand head and shoulders above everybody else as the wide receiver number 3. There might be somebody like Chad Beebe who takes most of those opportunities and reps. But with BC Johnson, Amir Smith-Marset or Marset-Smith, I can never remember. Smith-Marset. And then BC Johnson, you have guys who could give you something different. And if you want a wide receiver 3 to give you a different vibe, a different look, that's an opportunity there. And then we continue to forget about Irv Smith Jr. as well, who could factor into that passing game. But these are the kind of things that are fun to talk about as you get ready for a season, not the disappointing negative things that we thought we might be talking about heading into this season. So again, the vibe has completely changed. The chat is going crazy right now as well as part of this stream, and on Twitter is all around this team. There's a lot of excitement. Now, Jack, we started this show kind of poking fun, saying that you are now the famous, noteworthy Pro Football Talk personality. Ian Rappaport was quote tweeting you the other day because you were the one who broke that Sheldon Richardson news. This was news to one Chris Hockey on the Power Trip Morning Show. I know I texted you, probably woke you up. I wasn't the only one, I'm sure. I don't know if your dad was texting or your friends were texting, but everybody was trying to get hold of Jack Day this morning. And Chris Hockey was convinced that Jack Day was not a real person, that he was either a spoof name or a pseudonym or something that had been used, or a mistake, a typo that Pro Football Talk put out. But Chris Hockey may or may not have met you in person, but you did start at the iHeartRadio station with working behind the scenes with the sales side of things a couple months before the pandemic hit. And then we all left the office and worked from home. So there's an understandable reason why maybe Chris doesn't exactly know who you are, but you do work with him on some stuff via email and via the sales side of things. So what I have here, Jack, I'm going to pull these graphics down real quick. I have a video version. Have you seen this? This just got posted right before the show, before we went live, but a video version of the situation that unfolded on the Power Trip this morning. Have you seen this?
I think I saw a little bit of it, yes.
Okay, I'm going to add this to the stream here. We're going to
play, but
Sheldon feature it here. All right, so this is the Power Trip Morning Show covering the Sheldon Richardson news and trying to figure out who Jack Day is. Jack and I are going to be in the background here. It's about 20 minutes. I'm going to bounce around a little bit just to get to some of the highlights of it, but it's a funny bit, and there's visual evidence that this occurred this morning on the Power Trip.
Close to returning to the Vikings. He's 30 years old. It's supposed to be a depth play behind Dalvin Tomlinson and Michael Pierce. He was with the Browns the last couple of years after being with the Vikings. My favorite part of yesterday on Twitter is Ian Rappaport, some of the big-time NFL reporters, right, were confirming stories about Sheldon Richardson coming back to the Vikings. And if you went to ProFootballTalk.com or searched around the internet, KFAN's Jack Day was the one that was breaking the story. And Chris Hockey responded on Twitter going, "Who the hell is Jack Day?"
Yeah. Who is it?
Yeah, that was my favorite bit.
He's a sales assistant. He's a great dude, man.
But
he does the podcast with AJ. Yeah, he's great.
I've never met this gentleman.
99.9% you've met him.
Really?
Yes, you've walked by him probably 1,000 times.
He doesn't just write for KFAN, though.
No, I think he does a lot of things. But yeah, he's like a sales assistant.
But he works here. He does some Vikings stuff, some sports coverage. But like you said, I think he maybe does some freelance work for some other sites. But I love that I assume Chris thought that was just a misprint. Right, that was like AJ Mansour or something.
I really did. I thought somebody was playing a joke.
Who the hell's Jack Day?
Gee, walk through the sales department every once in a while. Say hi, Hawk.
Never anybody
No,
back
there's
there.
everybody here.
He was here before the COVID bit.
I don't remember that.
Even Musk knows him.
Yes. Because I go over there and watch all that prairie dog and hoping I get some money out of the bet.
Well, listen,
Prairie
my
dogging.
apologies to Jack Day. I literally thought that was a mistake.
Who did you think they meant?
Yeah.
I thought it was a made-up name. Remember that time they had a fake guy on
Sid Finch on Sports Illustrated?
Yeah, right.
Wasn't that his name, Sid Finch?
Wait,
Yeah.
yeah, right. No, I meant, didn't we have a fake guy draft expert or something like that?
Well,
Greg
no.
Swedberg.
Martin Moist.
Dave?
Yeah.
Call the hotline on your
Twitter account of like a lot of people. Yeah, it's hard to make up a Twitter account. You guys are no, we're not. I almost did. And you're telling me I've met this guy? Yes, he's right there. Look, now I know you're lying to me. No, that's Jack Dave right there. I walk by here every day. Nobody sits here. You're lying to me. That's a real person. You made that, didn't you? No, you made that up. There's no truth. And he's a local. Why would the local sales coordinator be breaking into We didn't. You think we did that? Yes. No, it's not hard to do. He's a real person. He works for. I'm not fine. I'm not. That's fine. But he works. Show me a picture.
Poor Jack Day.
Show me. Yeah. He works for Miser. Stopping around the sales thing isn't going to make me any more like. All right, hang on. Hold on. No, show me a picture. I will. Show me. There's no chance. Now I'm 100% sure. Nobody's ever said that. That's Jack Dave right there. That's his girlfriend or fiance. That's him. I write yada yada. You think we made all that? He's been on hockey. He's been on Twitter since 2017. Dude, Jack Day is a fake name. No, it's not. No, that's him. There's no way you're bullshitting me. I almost cussed because I walk by here every day. Dude, nobody sits at that. Look at all these. Chair. Look, there's not even. I moved the chair. Look at all these tweets. I'm not doing. Look at all these tweets.
We're not making up.
Burning the midnight oil last night.
In your bit because I don't.
Probably, right?
He's been writing since.
Either way, I look bad.
Now Hawk's going to fight us.
A plant as well. But on the phone now, KFAN's Jack Day. Hi, Jack.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Are you learning now that Chris Hockey
Like a
thinks
dog
you're
in heat.
imaginary?
A freak without warning. I have an appetite for sex because me so horny.
Rosie, pipe down. Jack, you broke the story yesterday that ProFootballTalk.com and Ian Rappaport and others confirmed that Sheldon Richardson was coming back.
I did, yes. And Chris, I am a real person. I saw your tweet yesterday as well. There's some funny replies in the comments, but I am indeed a real person. So.
And Jack, how long have you worked at iHeartMedia?
I think it's about a year and 8 months or so.
A year and 8 months.
I was in the office for probably 4 or 5 months before
Sure.
COVID stuff kind of
got
started.
Well, wait,
there was
hold
a
on.
window.
Jack, it's Muss. You actually hung out in my studio. You know, when they do the new guys coming in and you hang out, you get to
Right.
meet and they get to see whatever, show does or how the station works and stuff like that. So I obviously know that Jack Day is a real guy.
And it sounds like he's a real person because he's talking right now. I guess the most important question, Jack, we have for you is how many endorsements that Chris Hockey has do you work on?
A few of them. I don't know off the top of my head, but there are a few of them.
There are so many, it's hard to keep track.
So if Chris went through his emails right now, there would be emails from Jack Day.
Potentially for me. I don't know if I've actually emailed him or not, but there is a chance.
You're probably
Okay.
copied on them.
Yeah.
Jack, if that is your name. So have we ever boy, this is a terrible thing to ask.
You're afraid of the answer?
Yeah. Have we ever spoken in person to each other?
I don't know if we've ever had more than just a quick hi in the hallway. Like I said, I was only in the office for about 4 or 5 months before COVID started.
So do you feel a little bit better, Chris, if that's the
Yes,
case? If
and
you've
that-
never
okay,
had a
good.
15-minute
100%,
talk
yeah.
with Jack?
Yeah, and these are, obviously extenuating circumstances with everything that's gone down that everybody's been out of the office for so long. And so I have sort of an excuse outside of just my...
Well, 4 or 5 months you were here too, right?
All right, we'll pull it there. That was this morning when the Power Trip Morning Show learned who in the hell is Jack Day? And Jack, obviously, if you're a fan of this show, you know who Jack Day is. If you're watching this live stream, you can see him right now. He is, in fact, a real person, and he's been killing it at KFAN.com for a while now. So, Jack, that was fun. Thanks for being a good sport when they were kind of poking fun and trying to figure out who you were. But again, weird circumstances led to Chris Hockey not exactly remembering who you were. But hey, you keep breaking news like this, you'll keep making splashes, you will become memorable around the office and around Vikings Nation. So nice job, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was fun. And like you said, it was probably at least 4 or 5 missed calls from friends and family trying to wake me up, saying, hey, I think Lil B, Barb, messaged me on Teams saying hey, wake up, get out of bed. They're trying to get you on the power trip right now. So yeah, it was all fun and games, and I'm glad they could turn it into a bit and make some fun out of it.
Well, you are officially one of us now. I mean, you've arrived as far as being one of the gang now that they've poked fun and made a bit out of you on the radio. So this is the This is the State of Purple podcast, the KFAN's weekly Minnesota Vikings podcast. Minicamp is underway, so we will have a lot to talk about going forward here until we take a little bit break and then head back for training camp and then preseason and then the regular season. So it's fun from here on out. KFAN's famous Jack Day and AJ Mansour. Each week we're with you. If you want to catch old episodes of the State of Purple podcast, head over to iHeartRadio, iTunes, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and you can find them there. Don't forget to rate them, to share them. That helps this podcast get into the ears and the eyes of more people. So we would appreciate that. That's a great way that you can support us in this venture. But yeah, we'll be back next week, next Tuesday. We record an episode every Tuesday, and then if there's breaking news in between now and then, we'll hop on. We debated whether or not we should do the Danielle news yesterday, but we were a day away from it yesterday and we're busy. So we didn't make it yesterday, but if there's big enough news, we'll hop on and do a little shorty here as well. So Jack, congratulations on the week of Jack Day and your introduction to Power Trip Nation. But we know you well at KFAN.com and the State of Purple podcast. Thanks, man. You have a good week. Everybody else out there, have a good week as well. We'll see you next week on the State of Purple podcast.
10 seconds to go. We need a Minneapolis miracle. Case on a deep drop. Steps up in the pocket. He'll fire to the right side. Off by Diggs. Stay up.